Coming out at work can lead to discrimination. There's gambling in River City. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Focus Group. Tim Bennett here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We do a teaser in the beginning of the show. This one was related to shop talk, and John had found this article that said the headline was "Coming Out at Work Can Lead to Discrimination," and that's where I tried to do the joke. There's gambling in River City. We got to put out studies. We have to start putting studies out.
But I want to go back to River City for a minute because I know what that means and most people know what it means. I wonder where this whole, there's drugs down in River City. There's crime down in,
River City was where all the transients, where the transients was coming in and out on the stern wheelers, there's gambling, right? Isn't that where it's from?
There's booze down in River City.
Booze and girls, right.
Was River City ever real or is it a metaphor for the big old bad city?
Yeah, New Orleans, River City. There's gambling in River City. Yeah. So, but I laughed at the headline. But we'll talk about that in our Shop Talk segment. So, Mr. Nash, how was, can you believe we're into the month of September, which is your birthday month, too, by the way.
Birthday month, favorite month of the year for many
Good
reasons.
Weather.
Tim and I, it's the renewal time, as we call it, and it's the best weather usually across the country. And even into Europe and stuff, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to have a good day in September. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. Yeah. I said to someone in an email the other day, in my brain, Memorial Day was 3 weeks ago. So I don't know how the edit happened where it was Memorial Day to Labor Day. July, we had all those heat waves, right?
Yes.
Oppressive heat. And I think what happens when I'm stuck indoors a lot because it's really too hot to be out, that time gets blurry to me. But, when we were kids, you didn't grow up with air conditioning, did you?
No. We had a fan.
I know you probably had box fans.
And the windows would open. We had a fan in the window. Even when I went to college, it was funny. I was reading this blog of this one parent's mortified that the dorms didn't have air conditioning down in Marietta. None of us had air conditioning. There were a couple of places on campus that did. But that was just the time. But now everybody has this expectation that everything's going to be air conditioned. But, some of these buildings that are 100, 150 years old, they didn't have air conditioning. They're not going to put it in. They're bad enough. There's not enough plugs.
I just remember in the good old summertime, we were kids, and it was those really hot, humid days in Connecticut. And you basically, and we had all these techniques, maybe we should have the air being pulled out. You know what I mean? You would set up the box fan in the window, whatever. Right. And maybe it should be pulling in. And then, of course, it was well, kids, if you want to have a good night's sleep, we would take a cold shower or a cold bath or something and then just immediately try to go to sleep. Then years later, I had a friend who said, no, the way to do it is to take the hottest shower you could possibly take. Then everything's going to feel cold after that.
I didn't even think of that.
I don't know. It's counterintuitive, but right?
Yeah, well, back then, too, I guess we could, even though it wasn't all that long ago, I guess you could just open your window and cool the house down at night. But I forget what they said. They looked at 100 cities in the U.S., and 96 of them or something had the hottest summer on record ever.
On record, yeah.
So, hey, there was something before we logged on. I saw a headline, so we didn't have it ready for Caught My Eye, although I would have used it. I don't mean to laugh, and I don't have all the exact names. I don't know if you saw the same thing, but apparently this woman went to work on
Wells Fargo.
Week. Wells Fargo.
Yep.
Did you see that story?
It came up just literally the end. Yeah, too soon to use for this. But she clocked in. Someone said the article said she clocked in. So that I don't know what kind of a worker that is, but that basically never left her cubicle, and they found her dead at her desk 4 days later.
Yeah, 4 days later. And so I love it. So she worked in Tempe, Arizona, which sounds like it was maybe a call center or something.
Yeah.
Or customer service center. And I didn't want to laugh, but I guess I laughed because she checked in and then was in her cube and nobody paid attention to the poor thing until security finds her 4 days later. So what kind of security or cleaning service do they have at the Wells Fargo that somebody could just be at their desk? She had to have been there for a while, don't you think? Obviously,
B,
3 days.
And B, what's her job? If she's clocked in and she's doing something, wouldn't someone notice that the call wasn't being answered?
Does anyone know where Betty is? Has anyone seen Betty? Oh, she's sleeping in the cubicle. Oh, it's okay.
Like, yeah, did they find her slumped over on the key? I mean, I know what you mean, Tim. We don't mean to I know it's not a Schadenfreude thing. It's a terrible thing. But it's a weird thing that you would clock in to whatever job you're doing, which no one noticed you weren't doing it for the 4 days that you were slumped over dead at your keyboard. And no, she didn't have any friends who said, you want to get a cup of coffee, you want to go out to lunch, or,
You going
very
home?
strange.
Getting ready to
very
go?
Very strange.
Although I worked at a place where there was a woman who notoriously slept at her desk, head down, the whole deal. And I remember one day somebody told me, I said, you're kidding me. So I walked by there. She was sleeping right in the open, door open, whole deal. And
and it was really sleeping, right?
Yes. And I remember accusing the guy. I said, you're lying. Oh, no, go by. Because I went by a couple times to check. She's full out snooze. I said, well, maybe she's had a rough morning or something.
No, it's... Tim, maybe she was like a mortgage application specialist, and like 4 days later, we haven't heard about our pre-approval. Let's
She's
go
working
check
on
with
it.
her.
She's at her desk. She's there. I'm
And
sure she'll get back to you.
Could you imagine, like, going in on the monitor, there's this same letter just going across because her head's laying on the keyboard, like, just reams and reams of this stuff. I don't know. We're being bad, but
that's like when I went to go take the GMAT and I fell asleep.
Yeah.
At the
computer.
Do you want to send these scores to you? No. That's 0. I mean, I think I got credit for my name. I do remember the story was about dinosaurs, and I was bored to death. I just flown in from Hawaii. I landed at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
The test was at like 7:30, and I didn't sleep, and I just boom. The first thing was reading comprehension or something. All I remember was a story about dinosaurs, and I couldn't be any more bored. Boom.
I was any more bored.
Can you imagine?
I'm
sure everybody there has talked about the guy who slept through the GMAT.
You can't be the only one. I remember when you called me like a day later, you're like, you're not going to believe this.
And I paid $900 for it. The company wouldn't reimburse me because I got no score. So,
I didn't know that part of the story.
Yes, that's what even made me worse. I was even more angry. But that's life. So, Mr. Nash, so later on the show, we're going to be doing, Deep Discount's a partner of ours here, but it's Criterion Month in September. So Mr. Nash is going to be playing Pick That Flick. So stay tuned later on in the show for your chance to win a disc from our friends at Criterion and Deep Discount. But without further ado, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
Mine's kind of a shorty/personal one, but I'll kick it off by saying this. Years ago, if you've been a long-time listener, you know that I actually went back to school to learn how to be an animator. It was a 2-year class, a 2-year schedule, and my second instructor there, and you had these instructors for 3 months at a time, I think, and my second guy was a wonderful animator named James Chang, and one day during class, people were talking about some of their favorite movies, and out of nowhere, he just simply said, I don't like sequels. I hate sequels. There's plenty of stories to be told. Why do you want to tell a story like a second and a third time with the same characters? And some of the students pushed back with like, well, what if you love a character? What if you love a story? He's like, no, one movie's enough. And I tend to agree. Like, not every sequel lives up to the first. The exception would be The Empire Strikes Back being almost better than Star Wars. But this came across the wire from Variety, and the minute I saw it, I thought, at last, somebody agrees with me about this particular franchise, the Toy Story franchise. So it turns out that Quentin Tarantino is no fan of any Toy Story movie beyond Toy Story 3 because in his opinion, and actually in my opinion too, Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 was the rare time Hollywood or Pixar made a perfect trilogy. Each movie was better than the last one. Like Toy Story 2 was better than 1. Well, not better, different. Different enough that you really got a kick out of it. And 3 was just fantastic. So he says Toy Story 3 is one of the greatest movies ever, which is why he refuses to watch 2019's Toy Story 4. So he was on Bill Maher, and he Club Random podcast, and the Oscar winner suggested that Toy Story could have been one of the great film trilogy had the animated franchise not continued with the fourth film. He says, I don't watch all the animated movies and stuff, but I'm a big fan of the Toy Story trilogy. I think there's only one trilogy that completely and utterly works to the nth degree, and that's A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I guess those are Westerns. It does what no other trilogy has ever been quite able to do. So he says the first one's terrific, the second is so great and takes the whole thing to a new level, and the third just obliterates everything before it. He complained a bit about the Mad Max movies. I don't know, the original was Mad Max, then there was Mad Max, then there was The Road Warrior, and then, as you know from a previous discussion, there was Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome with Tina Turner. So that's kind of it. Toy Story 5 is in writing and production right now, and it's supposed to come out, sometime in the future. And they're claiming that there's going to be another WALL-E movie possibly, and maybe New Finding Nemo. So it just was one of these things where it's just a personal thing. Like sometimes I think leave the original alone. Maybe you don't need a second one. So that's
well.
That's
he liked 1, 2, and 3.
Loved him. Yeah.
Did he hear or read anything about 4? Was 4 not as good as the first 3, or is
he
that
just had
his
no
impression?
Interest. And I got to tell you something. I waited a year before I saw Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 was really well done. It was a great story. It looked
Would you
beautiful.
say it's as good as the other 3?
I don't know. This is why it caught my eye. I agree with Quentin Tarantino. I think they could have done 1, 2, and 3 and called it a day. But these franchises, they're like Money in the Bank, right?
Well, it's like that Despicable Me, right? Isn't that the
yes,
things
exactly.
With the one eye?
Yeah. Those are the Minions, Tim. With the
Minions.
So it's a stupid little caught my eye, but I like when something like him says, "Oh, yeah." So that was. I got it. I thought, he gets my thinking too.
So I thought you were going to say it was the equivalent of Obama when he said at the DNC convention that we've seen this movie before and the sequel's never as good.
Good as it.
Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all know the sequel's worse. Mine is very different. And John and I have often talked about one of our favorite guests here, Erin McHugh. In one of her books, it talked about how if you ever see, particularly in the summer, a kid's lemonade stand, always stop and support them. And John does that. And
I do.
I do that if I see one. And for all the great reasons that you get out of it with the kids and the interaction and making change and the excitement and the whole deal. So there's this kid in Norwood, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston. And he decided instead of lemonade, because there are a bunch of kids selling lemonade, he was going to sell homemade ice cream. And so he set up this homemade ice cream stand, and he wanted to raise money for his brother's hockey team, which it's called the Boston Bear Cubs, and it features players with physical and developmental disabilities. And his brother is part of the team. So he wanted to raise money for this team because they needed extra equipment, and they didn't get as much funding as some of the other hockey teams. So he thought this would be a great way to raise some money, and it'd be different. So he came up with 3 flavors: vanilla, shaved chocolate, and Fluffernutter.
That last one was one of my favorites, by the way.
and they said, and he mostly had sold them to friends and family that came by to support it and made them money. But immediately they received a letter from the Norwood Board of Health ordering them to shut down the ice cream stand. And it said town officials had received the complaint that the 12-year-old's ice cream stand violated the Massachusetts Food Code, a state regulation. And so the mother was upset, and she was surprised. She said this letter came at August 5th. She said, there's so many lemonade stands out there. She said, I don't know why they just want to shut down, the kid's ice cream stand, Danny's ice cream stand. So she said, obviously somebody complained. She said, it certainly could have just come to us, but they complained. And so the town manager said that they had to shut it down because Massachusetts law allows lemonade stands and bake sales, but not homemade ice cream, because there's concern that the ice cream could be contaminated with listeria and other bacteria because it was homemade. Of course, nobody got sick.
No.
So anyway, the little kid had to shut down his ice cream stand, but then the town rallied around, and there was a company called Furlong's Candies, an auto group. All had done fundraisers for the hockey team. They ended up raising enough money to make sure the team is well funded for at least 10 years.
10 years.
They raised thousands of dollars and to support this little kid. They said the sad part is that town officials then began receiving hate mail and death threats at their houses. People were looking up addresses which is, gone too far as well. And but the town manager said they understood where people would be upset about it. They were just concerned from a health matter. He said, and once there's a complaint, we have to act upon it. But everybody at the end of the day thinks it turned out okay because they ended up raising money for this hockey team. But, this was one of these where I can't imagine somebody going out of their way to complain about, because you see the picture, two little kids there with the table and probably whipped up some ice cream out of a machine at home.
Yeah, and there's a little thing talking about why they're raising the money, and it's not like it's a mystery. I did read this one, and I love that it comes to us from Channel 12 Boston. The screen grab you sent has the little Channel 12. It was 59 degrees when they were running that story. That's a little chilly for the late summer. But look, Tim, you've been recently in local government, and you know that you have to do some things. But then the thing that you touched upon, which I thought was also important to note, was when they started getting the death threats and hate mail. I mean, let's be a little real about this. It's an ice cream stand, right? Does it really require you to go and knock on someone's door or threaten their life? Right?
Yeah. No, that's the part that gets ridiculous too, is when people take it too far. You can be upset and you can write a letter or whatever, but to show up at somebody's house or to send them a death threat is just crazy. But
you've had people show up at your house?
Oh yeah, people show up at the door. People call. I got a nasty note last week. Yeah, I got a nasty letter last week telling me how bad I was. But whatever.
Are you serious?
I voted. Yeah, because I voted yes that a camper with a hitch was considered a trailer.
Isn't it?
That was my offense. Yeah. How dare I?
You got a nasty letter because of that.
Yeah, how dare I? How dare I vote that way? But
I'll just say this: it's really
I'll be glad when it's over. Yeah.
It's going to be. It's so easy to complain in our current culture, and with social media and doxing and all the crap that people do. It's kind of like that incident last week at Arlington with the Trump campaign and the woman that they shoved aside who worked for the Arlington National Cemetery decided not to fully push the filing of her claim through because, quote, some of his supporters would come after her. That's how we're living now? Yeah, it's crazy. And then the ice cream thing is different, of course, but not that terribly different.
No, it's still there. So craziness. So, hey, as we mentioned earlier on, Deep Discount's been a partner of ours here since we started, not since we started, but for quite some time, since we started in this format, certainly. And you can learn all about them at focusgroupradio.com and click on the Deep Discount logo and start shopping away. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nash. He's going to talk to you about September, which is Criterion Month, and your chance to win with his game, Pick That Flick. So, Mr. Nash.
We want to thank Deep Discount and the Criterion Collection for providing a lot of discs to give away this month. And every week we're playing Pick That Flick, and the game is easy. I'm going to play an audio snippet, a little grab from a movie. If you know the title of the movie it came from, simply send us the name of the movie to letters@focusgroupradio.com. That's letters. Well, Tim, the Twitter. letters@focusgroupradio.com. If it's an email you don't check too often, you might want to include your mailing address, because if you're right, I'll just use that to send you the disc if you win. Or if you check it, I'll send you a note and say, hey, you won. Let me get your mailing address. We only use it to send the discs out. So I'm going to play a clue here, and I'll play it twice. And as I said, if you know the name of the movie this comes from, let us know.
Dorothy, get back to work. Excuse me, but Dorothy's under my jurisdiction as well, you know. And I say she can listen to a spot of music if she likes.
All right, we'll give that to you a second time. And lovely with podcasts, you could just keep rewinding it until you get it. But here we go again.
Dorothy, get back to work. Excuse me, but Dorothy's under my jurisdiction as well, you know. And I say she can listen to a spot of music if she likes.
Now, I need to let you know that every year when I do this, Bob helps. And Bob is mischievous. He looks for parts of movies that you might totally not remember. But as we like to say here on the Focus Group, every movie has fans and everybody gets it. Last year we gave every disc away, so I have confidence that you're all going to get it. Letters@focusgroupradio.com if you know the movie this came from. Before we go to the new release this week, I do want to highlight a new movie that came out on the Criterion Collection. Just literally came out, and it's Queerelle. This is an interesting movie if you're a film buff, and it's the last film of Rainer Werner Fassbinder. And I'll read you the description here. It's an erotically searing adaptation of Jean Genet's controversial novel with Brad Davis as Georges Curel, a handsome Belgian sailor exploring the various dimensions of his sexuality at a sordid brothel in France. The movie is shot in this expressionistic soundstage vision of a French seaport town. It has a very interesting look to it cinematography-wise. And Brad Davis, as I mentioned, he plays Georges Curel. Bob and I, when I brought this movie up, he's like, I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I've seen bits and pieces of it from film class and stuff like that. So I threw it up here as just something to check the Criterion Collection for, because there's a real homoerotic tone to this entire movie that's inescapable. Because, let's be real, I mean, Werner I think
when
Fassbinder
did it come
himself,
out? Was it 1982 or?
82, yes, yep.
82, okay. Huh. I don't remember seeing that.
No, this was like an art house film, and Fassbinder it was himself queer, and Jean Genet, the French author, or Jeanette, was queer as well. So so I just wanted to highlight that as something that's one of the cool things about Criterion is they will take a film and this has like a lot of cultural import. So check it out. And I want to let you know that we do have a new release this week, and it's one that I'm dying to see. I didn't see it in theaters. It's Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Generations in the future following Caesar's reign, apes are living harmoniously as the dominant species, and humans are living in the shadows. As a new tyrannical ape leader builds his empire, one young ape undertakes a harrowing journey that will cause him to question the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. So I know for a fact that Tim is a huge fan of the original Charlton Heston, Planet of the Apes. Then it was Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then I forget, Battle for the Planet of the Apes, was it? I always forget the way the trilogy went.
Yeah, the new ones scare me a little bit because they made the apes very real, and mean. A lot meaner than they were little Cornelius.
They're not Roddy McDowell in a rubber mask.
No, which I love.
So this is like the third time they've rebooted Planet of the Apes. So there was a reboot of Planet of the Apes with Mark Wahlberg, and I think there were one or two movies there. This series, these are the ones. There's a lot going on in these movies. A lot of good critical review. I haven't seen it yet, and I'd like to. But that's the show. That's the release this week. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes on 4K Ultra HD.
Coolio. So do you well, okay. So why don't you, do you want to play the clue one more time for the folks or
Sure.
All
right. So pick that flick. If you know the name of the name of the movie this came from, letters@focusgroupradio.com. You might want to include your mailing address. Here we go.
Dorothy, get back to work. Excuse me, but Dorothy's under my jurisdiction as well, And I say she can listen to a spot of music if she likes.
Can't go wrong with a British film, right?
I was going to say, was it British? Because that's the only clue I would get. So.
That's the accents, yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our business birthday and a shop talk. So stay with us.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Hey, welcome back to The Focus Group. Tim Bennett here with John T. Nash. We are The Focus Group. Learn all about us at focusgroupradio.com. Mr. Nash, without further ado, we've got our business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Born today, September 4th in 1848, is Lewis Howard Latimer. Lewis Howard Latimer. And if you're watching on our video, there's a placard from Black History Month that shows what he did, but it really just touches very little on what his accomplishment was to America and to the world, quite frankly, from an engineer standpoint. I didn't know much about or anything about him. Do you know the name at all?
Not at all. And when you sent this, I also went online to just poke around a bit. What a brilliant guy, right?
Yeah, and in many regards, things that we use and take for granted, particularly air conditioning, wouldn't have happened.
That one was the surprise to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I won't. There's an awful lot here. If you wanted to, as John says, look him up. But I'll touch on some of the highlights. So he was born September 4th, 1848, in Chelsea, Massachusetts. He died in Flushing, Queens, at age 80 in 1928. They call him an American inventor and patent draftsman. His inventions included the evaporative air conditioning, or air conditioner, which is essentially the precursor to what we know as air conditioning, an improved process for manufacturing carbon filaments for light bulbs, an improved toilet system for railroad cars. He also helped Edison with the electric light and working up drafting plans and so forth. He also did a patent for cooling and disinfecting an apparatus for disinfecting items. He had a patent for locking racks for hats, coats, and umbrellas. He also developed a bookshelf for libraries that was more orderly with movable shelves and other sorts of lighting fixtures. But interestingly, his dad was a slave and had left the South and got to Massachusetts. And somebody had recognized his father and felt that his father had escaped rather than having been sold or had bought his freedom. So the family, as they were in the Boston area, they ended up they had to split the family apart. So his mother and father decided, for safety of the family after the Dred Scott decision, they separated. And his father's trial, he was actually represented by Frederick Douglass, and he was able eventually to purchase his freedom. But the family split up so that they couldn't be all gathered up and sold back into slavery or sent back south. So this
is it, Tim. Just think about that for a minute. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So it was a family of 10. He ended up going into the Navy, and so Lewis Latimer was able to get into the Navy at age 16. He served and was discharged in 1865, and he immediately got employment at a patent law office where he made $3 a week. But he was able to learn how to use a set square, a ruler, drafting tools, drafting tables. And the boss recognized his talent for sketching patent drawings so perfectly and precisely that he was promoted to the position of head draftsman, which earned him $20 a week in 1872, which of course was unheard of at the time. He ended up getting married. The family had moved to Connecticut, and they moved around a bit. And while he was working in the patent offices of this attorney's firm, he ended up improving the toilet system for railroad cars, which were called water closets at the time, of course. He was contacted and worked with Alexander Graham Bell, who employed him to be the draftsman for Bell's patent law firm and provide all the necessary drawings required to receive the patent for the Bell telephone. So he did all of the patent drawings and everything for Alexander Graham Bell for the first telephone systems. He was also hired to be the draftsman for Thomas Edison for the light bulb. So he actually drew so it wasn't sexy. So all the pictures of what he did were just these very detailed black and white drawings, which would not, if you were showing them on screen, not so sexy. But if you think about the telephone, you think about the light bulb, had it not been for this guy to have done all the drafting documents and the patent paperwork, it would have been a very different. We might not know who Graham Bell or Edison were. He was able to, as well as doing the patents for the light bulb, he also was able to figure out how to create some carbon filaments between the bulbs so they wouldn't blow out or break with travel, and went over to Europe and actually taught a number of the factories over there how to develop and make these bulbs. And while he was there, as if he wasn't busy enough, he translated all the data from Thomas Edison's light bulb into German and French.
Are you kidding me?
No.
God, what a cool guy.
Yeah, so he developed the forerunner to air conditioning. He also had a patent for a safety elevator so that riders wouldn't fall out down the shaft, the elevators where they would drop.
They were open door, open cage.
And he was the only person and the first person of color to be named as an Edison pioneer, which anybody who ever worked with Edison over the years got to be part of this elite group, and he was the only person of color that was admitted into that group. He also he taught English and drafting courses at school. He also played the violin and the flute. He painted portraits and wrote plays. I'm like, when did you have time to do anything else? And there's many,
and he raised
many
a family
honors.
too, right?
And raised a family.
Yeah.
His daughter married the first African American teacher ever in the New York City school system. They have this great pedigree. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, actually has a program named after him there for inventors. But he's got numerous awards and accolades, of course, after he died. And but there's so much about him. He's one of these people, you and I run across them every now and then, where you could either do a great documentary if there hasn't been one made, or it could be a great movie. I mean, the guy's like a polymath. He's done everything. So happy birthday to Lewis Howard Latimer.
And when I look at the span of his life, 1848, right? To 1928.
1928, yeah.
So think of all the history that he saw in between, and think of all the history he was directly responsible for helping create, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like the adoption of electricity and lighting inside and stuff came down to the utility and the versatility, or actually the longevity of the light bulb, and his invention of improving the carbon filament, and I think it's a partial vacuum inside the light bulb as well, revolutionized the whole thing, because now you could put a bulb in, it could actually be used for, I don't know how many months it lasted in those days,
right.
But and then that precursor to air.
Yeah, no, it didn't talk anything about education, but I thought, how do you know enough, particularly from a technical standpoint, to translate Edison's work into German and French?
And
you and I took how many years of French? Could you translate a technical book into French?
No. And one thing that I love that you mentioned I did see some of his patent drawings when I looked him up online. And patent drawings, by their very nature, are extremely complex, because what you're basically doing is claiming an intellectual right to an idea, and the idea has to literally be in this. It has to be very technical, like so that someone doesn't copy it, etc.
Right.
It's an incredible skill that he would sit there and create the patent sketches that would then lead to them having the protection the whole bit. So this is a great business birthday. I love when you find someone like this that we don't know about. It was like, who was the woman who was the pilot? And there's a part of the O'Hare Airport named after her too.
I think it was Bessie Coleman. Was it Bessie?
I think so. Yeah, exactly. And she was African American and amazing woman, and like a first black pilot or something. Just and people probably walk through O'Hare and go through that section that's named after her with a little display case and have no idea unless they stopped and took the time.
Well, it's funny because there's a street in Philly called Latimer Street, and I'm sure it's probably named after him. I'm sure it is. It's a little alleyway street in Center City. And every once in a while, you wonder where they got their names from. I'm sure it must come from him. That's my guess.
Tim, I think it makes sense. I think your logic is ironclad there.
So, hey, on our Shop Talk segment, John had found this article, the headline, and we talked about it a little earlier at the opening of the show. Coming out at work can lead to discrimination. This was according to the Williams Institute at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Law. And essentially, they had done this study asking a number of workers whether they felt that their experience in the workplace had changed when they had decided to come out, or let workers or their immediate supervisors know that they were part of the LGBTQ population. They said almost half experienced discrimination or harassment, including being fired, not hired, not promoted, or being verbally or physically or sexually harassed because of their sexual orientation once it was known. So they said many LGBTQ workers stay closeted to avoid the negative experience. I was not surprised by
No.
this.
Well,
but I was surprised of the timing of it, but I wasn't surprised of it overall. What was your thought on this, of why you picked this?
a couple things. One, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, Tim will send in imagery to use for the segments that he's like coordinating or something. And the picture that he sent for this, I had to do a double take. So it's two guys cutting through a piece of plywood, and they've both taken their shirts and tied them up like they're like Marianne on Gilligan's Island or something, you know, like make them like a hall. I don't know what you want to call that. And they're both acting. I mean, it's you can't. I mean, I thought because I know you and I are like, we got to find the right image, but that's hysterical. A, B. This was disappointing, but not surprising, which is why when Tim teased this at the top of the show, he said, hey, you know, it's gambling in River City, as if no one knew that was going on.
Right.
That's the part to me. Here we are in 2024. The Williams Institute is still putting out this type of information, and rightly so. But I'm surprised the numbers are what they are, but maybe not. And, you know, one thing about the study that that they didn't necessarily quantify here was what industries, what areas of the business world would someone encounter the most discrimination. So you can imagine that in corporate America, if you're in banking or other industries, banking in particular used to be one of those, oh my God, you know, if you were gay in banking back in the 80s or 90s, yeah, exactly. You just did not say a word because the bro network would take you down. You know, that, and so that's one area. That's changed a great deal, by the way. That has really changed a great deal. Medicine, not so much. I think that, you know, that mission is a little different. So is this happening in construction? Is it happening in retail or fast food? Like what, there was no, they didn't really go into that, did they?
I think it happens everywhere still. I think
Doesn't matter the industry?
Well, I think there's an awareness, right? There's certainly an awareness of there's different people at work than maybe what you might think is, and I'll put it quotes, normal. And they talked in the article here about, there needs to be more protections for employees. I'm not sure protections are going to help. I mean, do you really think it's more protections are going to help? There's supposedly protections for employees currently. It's just whether there's an acceptance of people. And I've seen firsthand, now I've not been in corporate America for some time, though I saw firsthand of people that were brave enough to come out as gay or lesbian, that were not stereotypical flamboyant as some people would expect, but I did see where it hurt them in their careers. They became very stagnated in their roles. And I used to feel very bad about it because I knew what the underlying current was. You know, there was the nonstop questioning of me of why I was not married. Well, we all know what that means.
Well, and didn't you get the moniker like City Boy or something?
City Boy. Yeah, I was called the City Boy because I lived in Philadelphia, but we know what that means, right? We all know what that means without saying what it means. And so I totally am not surprised by this at all. That's why I said there's gambling in River City. The people that I know that were out eventually all left and went and did something else because they realized while there wasn't an outward, perhaps an outward offense toward them, it was certainly underneath, and there was an undercurrent.
An undercurrent, right?
Yeah, and in some cases it was. You know, I've told this story before that I worked at a regional office where the person that was out, that delivered, that was one of the assistants that would deliver the mail, that people refused to have him touch the mail. They were afraid they were going to get AIDS, and we're very vocal.
I remember that. Yeah.
And these were supposedly educated people. So I it's no different than if somebody, you know, physically you could tell if somebody's a different race or a different color, right? You could see it. I could see that your skin color is different. And while you might say, we're going to give everybody equal opportunity, you still know whether somebody has been discriminated against or not. I believe so. So that might just be me. I've seen it happen too much.
I've heard a lot. Like I've owned my own businesses since I was basically out of school, And those businesses have been agencies that specialize in LGBTQ marketing. So, especially back in like Moon City days, I would show up somewhere, and my little joke was, "Well, I'm gay for pay," ha ha ha. But that Tim used to talk with me about this in an interesting way. I was external to most companies,
right? So you were safe.
So yeah, exactly, and I always treated with respect. Very, very rarely did I can remember one conversation that happened at a major insurance company that was really off-putting, but during a presentation. But mostly, but it was fascinating when Tim told me that, like, because he was talking about this exact thing with the mail, the guy that used to deliver the mail, and people were afraid, and it was back in the day. And when you said, well, it's not a problem for you because you're not part of the organization, you're a vendor, you're an agency, you come in, you do your thing, people can relate, et cetera, but you're not here on a day-to-day basis. And that was a real eye-opener for me because I had just assumed that everything that I saw was exactly how it was going down in corporate America. And then you would fill me in and you'd be like, guess what happened today? Just crazy stuff, right?
Yeah. And it would be, and I you hear things and it's just behavior. You know it. You have an intuition. You can feel it. You know it. And
what's that line from that famous? If I don't know what it look, I can't. What was that thing about porn? But I know it when I see it, right?
I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it.
So when you're talking about this behavior, we know it. You know the undercurrent, right?
Yeah. No, you can. You can feel it, and it's there, but it's there for lots of groups, right? Women feel it. People that are older feel it in the workplace. People that are LGBTQ feel it in the workplace. I mean, how many people do we know now at our age feel like they're being moved along or pushed out? Because
interesting.
Right?
I have a quick little anecdotal story. I used to be the art director for a magazine called Genre. It was one of those first gay male titles that came out in I want to say it was the 90s. And they printed at a facility here in upstate New York called Quad Graphics, which is in Saratoga. Pretty progressive town. I mean, this is where obviously the racetrack is, et cetera. Beautiful facility. So the day I went up used to do something called a press check. You would go and the pressman would start running and they'd pull these massive sheets off the presses that before they got all cut up into the pages, and he has to check the color, the whole bit. Well, the day I was up there, they were press checking the swimsuit section. It was all these hot guys in Speedos. And they're running the machine and they're pulling off the pages, and I'm supposed to be looking at the color, approving each page. And I'm like turning red because, the photography was really sexy, and they know it's a gay magazine too. All the pressmen knew what they were running. Press check goes fine. I head back to the city. About 2 weeks later, I got a handwritten note from Saratoga, and it was from one of the guys on the press who said, I was working with you the day you did the press checks, and I want to thank you for helping out and being a part of this magazine. It turns out the guy was gay. But no one knew about it. Certainly at the plant that he worked at. And so that was just like one of those things like, wow, like I was probably standing right next to the guy and he never let on until later he felt comfortable and he subscribed.
What magazine was that?
Genre. Remember Genre?
Genre, that's right, Genre.
No,
I remember, yeah. No, it's, I mean, I've told you this too before when you guys had done the work for us, particularly reaching the LGBTQ consumer. And even the first time we placed a person of color in one of our TV ads, very privately and almost sheepishly, people would sneak by and come into the office and introduce themselves. I didn't know a lot of them that might have had a brother that was HIV positive, or I remember the black woman that came in said it was the first time in her 25 years at the company she saw her face or saw herself in a TV ad.
Reflected.
And how much it meant to her. So those things are important, and people don't, we as white guys sometimes take it for granted, but I do know that it is important to push the envelope and to be authentic and open if you can, but in some cases it's difficult. And as you know, it was very difficult in the 60s, 70s, 80s in corporate America to be anything different. And
different was a career killer.
As we see with Robbie Starbuck, which we talked about on our Unbuttoned TFG Unbuttoned this week. It's not a lot's changed in some cases, right?
It's like, Tim, sometimes you open the shows, like sometimes we'll open and with the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's
Emil Elgis, Pomperaug High School, John,
Yeah.
right? Emil Elgis.
more
On
things
that happy
change.
note, Mr. Nash, you want to say goodbye?
Yes. All right. Hey, thank you. Well, that was Shop Talk, and sad to say that discrimination at the core at your job is alive and well, according to the Williams Institute. And if you've been experiencing it, you know that to be a fact. So big thanks to our friends at Deep Discount and the Criterion Collection. This month is the Criterion giveaway. If you want to rewind a bit to our section on Deep Discount, you could hear an audio clue that we played. If you know the name of the movie it came from, drop us a line at letters@focusgroupradio.com and include your mailing address. And if you win, you're going to get a Criterion disc. They sent a bunch, and it's a good range of discs. So with that, friends, we want to say, let me pull it up here. Don't text and drive, arrive alive. And we are going to see you next week here on the Focus Group.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.